You click because somewhere in the back of your mind, you already suspect it. That grip on your driver, the one you've been wrapping your hands around for years, might be quietly costing you distance, accuracy, and a small fortune in clubs you never needed to buy. I'm going to tell you something that took me 3 seasons and far too much money to accept. The grip matters more than the driver head, more than the shaft, more than that $400 club sitting in your bag right now. I learned this the hard way, standing on a driving range in the middle of October, watching a man twice my age outdrive me with a driver older than my car. And by the end of this, I'll hand you a grip method written down in 1905 by a 6-time Open champion, a technique so simple you can test it this weekend with the exact club you already own. This is not for people buying brand new equipment. This is for you, with the driver you've had for years, in your own garage, on your own range. I want to take you back to that October afternoon because it still bothers me. I was at a public range just outside town, one of those places with the worn rubber mats and the yellow flags that never quite tell you the distance. I had just spent good money on a new driver. The salesman promised me 20 extra yards. I believed him because I wanted to. And 2 stalls down from me was a retired fellow, thin as a rake, swinging what looked like a driver from the 1990s, slow, smooth, almost lazy. His ball flew past mine every single time. Now here's where most people would tell you it was his swing, his timing, his experience. And I told myself the same comfortable lie for about 20 minutes. But I couldn't stop watching his hands because his hands didn't look like mine. The way they sat on the club was different, settled, like they belonged there. Mine gripped that new driver the way you grab a shopping cart, tight, anxious, ready for a fight. So I did something I never do. I walked over and I asked him. And what he told me changed how I understand this entire game. And it saved me from doing what I was about to do, which was trade in that brand new driver for an even more expensive one. He said, and I remember it word for word, "Son, you can't buy what your hands won't allow." Then he showed me his grip. And I want to be honest with you, my first reaction was doubt. Deep doubt because it looked too simple. It looked like nothing. How could the way you hold a club matter more than $400 of engineering? But I was wrong. And I'm going to show you exactly how wrong, because the cost of staying wrong is something you pay every time you tee it up. Here is the first thing that stopped me cold. There have been controlled tests, real ones with launch monitors, the kind of machines that measure your ball speed down to the 1/10 of a mile per hour. And what they found is that grip pressure alone can change your club head speed by several miles per hour. Not the shaft, not the head, the pressure of your hands. Think about what that means. You have been sold for years the idea that speed comes from what you buy, a lighter shaft, a bigger head, a higher number on the box. But a golfer squeezing the club too hard is throwing away speed that no purchase can give back. The tension in your forearms is literally slowing the club down before it ever reaches the ball. I didn't believe it either, so I tested it myself. I went back to that same range with a launch monitor I borrowed from a friend who takes this far too seriously. I hit 10 drives, gripping the club as hard as I normally do, white knuckles, the whole thing. Then I hit 10 more, holding it softer, the way that old man showed me. The difference was almost 4 miles per hour of club head speed on average. 4, for free. 4 miles per hour of club head speed for a normal swing is worth somewhere around 8 to 10 yards a carry. I gained 10 yards by loosening my hands. 10 yards I had been paying hundreds of dollars chasing in the pro shop. But here is the part that made me angry once I understood it. This is not new knowledge. This is not some breakthrough from a modern lab. This was known more than 100 years ago, and it was written down plainly by one of the greatest golfers who ever lived. So the real question is not whether the grip matters. The real question is, Why nobody in that pro shop ever mentioned it to me. And I think you already know the answer, even if you don't want to say it out loud. Let me introduce you to a name most golfers have never heard, even though they use his invention every single time they pick up a club. His name was Harry Vardon, an Englishman, born on the island of Jersey in 1870. He won the Open Championship 6 times, a record that still stands today, more than a century later. And he did it with hands that had survived tuberculosis, which should have ended his career entirely. Vardon is the reason most of us hold a club the way we do. The overlapping grip, where the little finger of your bottom hand rests between the first 2 fingers of your top hand, is called the Vardon grip to this day. He didn't invent it entirely on his own, but he made it famous, and he explained why it worked when nobody else could put it into words. In 1905, Vardon published a book called The Complete Golfer, and in it he wrote about grip pressure in a way that sounds almost strange coming from a champion. He warned against gripping the club too tightly. He compared the correct hold to something gentle, something controlled, but never forced. Over 100 years ago, this man understood exactly what those expensive launch monitors would confirm generations later. So why did we forget? Here is where I want you to follow the money, because I finally did. The golf equipment business is not built on your grip. There is no profit in telling you to hold the club you already own a little softer. There is enormous profit in selling you a new driver every single year, each one promising the distance that was sitting inside your own hands the entire time. I counted it up once. Between that new driver, a fitting session, and 2 shafts I tried and returned, I had spent nearly $900 in 18 months chasing distance. And the real fix, was a change in grip pressure that cost nothing. That is the cost of not knowing. That is what they are quietly counting on you never figuring out. Here is something almost nobody checks, and it quietly ruins good swings every day. The thickness of the grip on your driver, the actual diameter of the rubber, changes the shape of your shots. It's not a small effect. It's the difference between a ball that fades gently into the fairway and one that hooks hard into the trees. Let me explain what I found, because when I understood this, a lot of my bad rounds suddenly made sense. When a grip is too thin for your hands, your wrists move too much. They flip through the ball, closing the club face, and you get that snapping hook to the left that you can never seem to fix. When a grip is too thick, your wrist can't move enough, the face stays open, and you get the weak slice to the right that sends your ball into the next county. For years, I blamed my swing. I took lessons. I paid a teaching pro $40 an hour to fix a hook that was never in my swing at all. It was in my grip. My grips had worn thin and slick over 3 seasons, and worn grips play thinner and slicker than fresh ones, which meant my hands were fighting the club on every single drive. The old-timers knew this too. Before rubber slip-on grips became standard, players wrapped their clubs in leather, strip by strip, and a good club maker in the early 1900s would build up the grip to fit a specific man's hands. It was custom, not because it was fancy, but because they understood that the hands are where the swing lives. A leather grip could be rewrapped, adjusted, thickened, or thinned. It was made to serve the golfer. Now, here's the tension I want you to sit with. Modern grips are made to be replaced, not adjusted. They wear out, they go hard and shiny, and when they do, you don't fix them, you buy new ones, or worse, you convince yourself the whole club is the problem, and you buy a new club. I have watched grown men trade in a perfectly good driver because it stopped working, when the truth is, the rubber on the handle had simply gone slick. So how do you know if your grip is the size of your problem? There's a simple check, and you can do it right now, sitting where you are. Take your top hand and grip an imaginary club. Look at where your middle and ring fingers land. If those fingertips are digging hard into the pad of your palm, your grip is too thin. If there's a big gap and your fingers can't reach the palm at all, it's too thick. When the fingertips just barely touch the pad, lightly, that's the size that lets your hands work the way they were built to. But knowing the right size is only half the battle, because now you're probably thinking the same thing I thought. That fixing this means another trip to the shop, another fitting, more money handed over to the people who created the confusion in the first place. And that is exactly what I want to save you from. I know what some of you are thinking right now. You're thinking this is fine for people who can afford a full fitting or a fancy new set or a garage full of tools. You've had the same driver for 10 years and you have no intention of spending a dime more on this game than you already have. Good. This next part is for you specifically, because everything I'm about to tell you works with the exact club in your bag right now, in your own home, with almost nothing. The first thing you can do costs you nothing at all, and it's the grip pressure lesson I learned from that old man on the range. Here is how I teach it to myself even now, before a round. On a scale where 1 is holding a club so loose it could fall out of your hands, and 10 is squeezing with everything you've got, most amateurs grip at about an 8 or a 9. Sam Snead, a man who won more professional tournaments than anyone in history and had a swing so smooth people paid just to watch it, described the right grip pressure as holding a small bird, firm enough that it can't fly away, gentle enough that you don't hurt it. And it gets worse, because it is not only pressure, it is the size of the grip itself. And this is where I lost even more money without realizing it. If this way of thinking about the game connects with you tracing the real fixes back to their source, instead of reaching for your wallet, I put the whole framework together in a series called First Fix, Deep Fixes, and System Complete. These are digital books that walk through exactly this kind of recovery, starting with the grip and working outward through every part of the game. The industry quietly profits from your not knowing. Everything in the description below. If you've made it this far in this video, you already think the way these books are written. Now, if you want to go even deeper into all of this, the history, the forgotten techniques, and the exact methods the old champions use, let's get back to what grip size is actually doing to your shots every single round. Aim for a 4 or a 5. That's it. When you address the ball, take a breath and let your hands soften. Let the tension drain out of your forearms. It will feel wrong at first. It felt terrifying to me, like I was going to lose control and send the ball sideways. But that softness is where your speed hides. Your body cannot swing fast through hands that are locked up tight. The second thing you can do at home is bring a dead grip back to life for the cost of almost nothing. When a grip goes hard and slick, most people assume it's finished. But a slick grip is usually just a grip coated in old oils, sunscreen, sweat, and dirt from your hands over hundreds of rounds. I take a bucket of warm water, a drop of dish soap, and a stiff brush. An old scrub brush works fine, and I scrub each grip firmly until the water runs dirty. Then I rinse it and let it dry. The tackiness that comes back will shock you. A grip you were about to throw away suddenly feels like new rubber again. I've brought grips back from what I thought was the grave doing this, and it takes about 10 minutes for a full set. That's a trick the shop will never tell you, because a clean grip is a grip you don't replace. The third thing, and this one genuinely surprised me, is that you can change the effective thickness of your grip without buying anything new. If your grip is playing too thin, and your hands are too active, and you're hooking the ball, you don't need a whole new grip. You need what the old club makers did with leather. Under every modern grip is the shaft, and builders add layers of tape underneath to build up the thickness. But you don't even need to take the grip off to test the idea first. Here's what I did to prove it to myself before committing. I took a strip of athletic tape, the cloth kind, and I wrapped it around the bare part of the shaft just below the grip, then held the club with my lower hand riding up onto it. It let me feel a thicker handle instantly, no glue, no solvent, no shop. That simple test told me my hook was a grip problem, not a swing problem, and it cost me a roll of tape I already had in the medicine cabinet. Now, If you want to make it permanent, building up under the grip is genuinely a job you can do on your own kitchen table. You need a hook blade or a utility knife, some grip tape, and a can of grip solvent. Though I've read of plenty of old-timers using mineral spirits or even just soapy water in a pinch. You peel the old grip, add an extra wrap or two of tape to build the thickness, and slide the grip back on. The whole thing costs a few dollars per club and maybe 15 minutes once you've done one. I resisted this for the longest time because it sounded like a professional's job. It is not. Men have been doing this in their own sheds for over a century. The only reason it feels intimidating is that we've been trained to hand every small task to someone with a cash register. And here's the part that ties it all together, the part that made me realize how much control had been taken out of my own hands, literally. When you re-grip a club yourself, you control the thickness, you control the tackiness, you control everything the equipment industry sells as a premium custom service. That old man on the range, the one who outdrove me with a driver from another decade, told me he hadn't bought a new grip fitting in 20 years. He did it all himself, on his workbench, exactly the way his father taught him. But even with all of this, the pressure, the cleaning, the thickness, there was still one piece missing. One thing I couldn't figure out on my own, and I only found it because I went looking in a place most golfers never think to look. Not a pro shop. Not a modern coaching video. I found it in the words Harry Varden wrote down over 100 years ago, and it's the single most valuable thing I'm going to give you today. When I finally got my hands on the actual writings from Varden's era, I expected the usual advice. Line up the V's, overlap the pinky, all the things you've heard 1,000 times, but buried in the older instruction from Varden himself and the players who learned directly from his methods around 1905 was a detail about the grip that has almost completely vanished from modern teaching. And when I tried it, it fixed the one thing all my other adjustments couldn't. Here it is. The pressure in your grip should not be even across both hands, and it should not be even across all your fingers. Varden taught that the real control of the club comes from the last 3 fingers of the top hand, the hand nearest the end of the club. Those 3 fingers, the middle, the ring, and the little finger, do the holding. The thumb and forefinger, the ones we all instinctively squeeze the hardest, should be almost passive, quiet, along for the ride. Read that again, because it is the opposite of what your instincts scream at you. Every one of us, under pressure, squeezes with the thumb and forefinger of the trailing hand. It feels like control. It feels like power. And it is the exact thing that throws the club face open, adds tension to the swing, and kills the release. Varden knew this in the age of hickory shafts and leather grips, and it got quietly lost as teaching moved from field to gadgets. I stood in my garage and tried it. I gripped the club and consciously let the thumb and forefinger of my trailing hand go soft, moving all the holding pressure into those last 3 fingers of my top hand. And I want to tell you exactly what happened because I didn't believe it myself. The club head felt heavier, not in a bad way, in a way where I could suddenly feel where it was. That heaviness is feel, and feel is what lets your hand square the face at the right moment instead of guessing. My next drives on the range were the straightest I have hit in my life. Not because I found some new expensive club, because I moved the pressure to the 3 fingers a man wrote about the year my great-grandfather was born. Think about the whole chain of this for a second. This method existed. It was written down plainly by the greatest golfer of his age. It worked in an era when equipment could not save you, when your hands were all you had. Then the industry found it more profitable to sell you speed in a box than to teach you speed in your fingers, and this knowledge slid into the background, kept alive only by a handful of old players and dusty books. And now it's in your hands tonight, for nothing. Let me give you the full sequence so you can do this yourself this weekend on your own club with no purchase and no appointment. Start by cleaning your grips with warm water and a drop of soap. Scrub them until the tack returns. Then take your normal grip and check where your fingertips fall to see if the thickness is right. Then set your overall pressure at a 4 or a 5 out of 10, the bird in the hand. And finally, and this is the piece that changes everything, move the holding pressure into the last 3 fingers of your top hand and let the thumb and forefinger of your trailing hand go quiet. Hit 20 balls that way. Just 20. I am not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to trust your own eyes when you see where the ball goes. That's the same thing that old man asked of me, and it's the reason I stopped spending money I didn't need to spend. I want to say one more thing about that fellow on the range, because I went back to find him weeks later and I never saw him again. I don't know his name. I never got it. But he handed me something that afternoon that no salesman ever did in all the years and all the dollars I gave him. He handed me back control of the one part of the golf swing that was always mine to begin with, my own 2 hands on the club. That's what this whole thing is really about. It was never about the driver. It was about who gets to decide where your money goes and whether you'll keep handing it over for things your own hands were designed to do. Every slick grip you scrubbed clean instead of tossed. Every drive you straightened by moving your pressure into 3 fingers. Every $100 you kept in your pocket, that's you taking something back that was quietly taken from you. You're the kind of person who suspects the simple answer is usually the true one, and that the expensive answer is usually the one somebody profits from. That instinct that made you click on this video, that quiet doubt about whether your grip really matters, that instinct was right the whole time. Trust it more often. It will save you a fortune. So here's what I want to know, and I want you to actually tell me. When you try the 3-finger grip pressure this weekend, the last 3 fingers of your top hand doing the holding, come back and tell me what happened to your ball flight. Did it straighten out? Did you find those extra yards? Leave it in the comments below right now if you have to, because I read them and I want to know if it worked for you the way it worked for me. This audience is quiet, I know, but I'm asking you directly. Type it out. Tell me. And if some part of you is tired of being sold the same distance over and over in a new box every spring, tired of paying for what common sense used to handle for free, then you belong here with the rest of us who are digging these old methods back up one at a time. This is a whole community of people reclaiming the practical knowledge that got quietly replaced by things we have to keep paying for. Join us, because next time I'm going to show you something about golf balls that nobody at the counter will ever admit. There's an old way to test whether the premium ball you're paying $6 for is actually round and balanced. A simple thing you can do at home in a glass of water with a little salt, and what it reveals about some of those expensive boxes will make you look at your whole bag differently. That test is older than most of the balls being sold today, and once you see a supposedly premium ball spin lopsided in the water, you'll never buy blind again. Your hands were always enough. Now you know it. Go prove it to yourself this weekend, and I'll see you in the next one. That old man's grip is exactly where I want to take you next. Inside the practical wisdom circle, I pick up right where we stopped, walking you through the full grip method. You can ask me your own question there, and a real person, me, answers you myself. You'd belong among thousands of old ways folks like you. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen and you can cancel any time with one click.